When the earthquake struck, my husband Ding Anbo supported his widowed sister-in-law with his left hand and held me, and his son with his right hand as he ran outside. I managed to hide under a table and narrowly escaped. My sister-in-law's courtyard was destroyed. My husband looked guilty. Su, my older sister-in-law has nowhere to go. Let's make room for her in our courtyard. I agreed readily on the surface. But in secret, I arranged for a cart to transport my dowry away that night. The next morning, I handed a divorce letter to Xiaoyan Zhao, who had returned in a hurry. He said impatiently, "What is it you want to say? Why can't you tell me instead of writing a letter?" When he saw the divorce letter, his expression froze. He raised his head and stared at me blankly. "Shinsu, have you gone mad? You want to divorce me?" I looked at him calmly and nodded. "Yes. I want a divorce." He gave me a strange look. "Are you blaming me for going to take care of your older sister yesterday and not returning to the mansion? I told you. Her house was destroyed, and she was running a fever. I couldn't just leave her." "I know." I didn't say much, just pointed to the divorce papers in his arms. "Put your seal on it. We're divorced." Anger welled up in his eyes. He glanced toward the storeroom, but suddenly seemed to think better of it. "Shinsu, if you insist on divorcing me, you won't get back a single penny of your dowry." My eyes filled with scorn. "Yes. I won't take it. Uncle, if you put your seal on this, I'll leave today with only my personal maid. Sierra, what do you think?" He paused, seemingly taken aback by my swift agreement. He reached out and grabbed my arm, softening his voice. Su, if you object to your elder sister-in-law staying in the courtyard, this matter can still be discussed. We can use our own money to buy her a new house so she can live comfortably. After all, my elder brother, before he died, repeatedly urged me to take care of her. I sneered. The Dingen Marquis mansion had been passed down through several generations, and none of the marquises had done anything worthwhile. The household accounts were already empty. The so-called Marquis mansion is already on the brink of collapse. Xiaoyan Zhao simply cannot afford to buy a new house for his elder sister-in-law. Sure. This money will likely be something he tries to coax out of me. Unfortunately, now that I have seen through him, I will never fall for his tricks again. I patiently said to him, "I have known all along that the Marquis's heart does not lie with me. He never married me willingly. Now, the person he truly desires is right before his eyes. Why not part ways amicably? Set me free, and fulfill your own desires?" My words exposed his true intentions, and his face immediately turned red with embarrassment. "What about Lanshi? You are his mother." Lanshi? I remembered that when the earthquake struck a few days ago, the first person he thought of was not me. His own mother. "Father, hurry up and find my aunt." He shouted loudly and rushed to the courtyard next door where the Ji family lived, together with Xiaoyan Zhao. I watched helplessly as Xiaoyan Zhao held Ji and Yu with his left hand and pulled Xia Lanshi with his right, running toward the open field outside. "Husband! Lanshi!" I screamed at the top of my lungs, but they seemed not to hear me. At the last moment, I hid under the table where I worshipped the Bodhisattva. A piece of the roof beam fell on the table, smashing the statue of the Bodhisattva to pieces. But I was unharmed. I think it was because I had worshipped the Bodhisattva devoutly every day. So it saved my life. This disaster also helped me see my husband and my children clearly. At this moment, Xiaoyan Zhao mentioning Xia Lanshi in front of me seemed rather ridiculous. I smiled indifferently. He had always been obsessed with his aunt. Hadn't he? Now that his aunt had become his mother, he should be even happier. Shouldn't he? Xiaoyan Zhao looked at me several times. "Shinsu, remember, you gave up the position of Lady Dingen on your own. Don't change your mind in the future." Change my mind? I snatched the divorce letter from his hand, pointed to the fingerprint I had pressed on it, and said word for word, I will never change my mind. I married Xia Yinzhao solely because my father was driven by greed and ambition. My family has been in the waterway escort business since my great-grandfather's generation. The waterway escort business is dangerous but profitable. Thus, the silver accumulated over generations had grown into a substantial fortune by my father's time. My father decided to shut down the dangerous escort business and instead start a silk and cloth trading business. However, merchants were looked down upon, and my father often faced obstacles in his business dealings. In the capital city, officials and merchants often colluded with one another. Thus, he devised a plan to use me, his daughter, and the family's silver to secure his business prospects. At that time, Xia Yunhe, the lord of the Ding'an Marquis mansion, passed away, and his younger brother, Xia Yunzhao, inherited his title. Although the Ding'an Marquis mansion was a founding noble family, its descendants were mediocre and unaccomplished, so it gradually fell into decline. Xia Yunhe was, after all, a lord. After he passed away, his funeral expenses were a huge sum of money. The Ding'an Marquis mansion was so destitute that they couldn't even afford to bury Xia Yunhe. When the servants of the Ding'an Marquis mansion were taking the family's antiques to the pawn shop, they happened to be seen by my father. He needed to form an alliance with the nobility to support his business, and the Ding'an Marquis mansion desperately needed a large sum of silver to cover their debts. They struck a deal immediately. My father couldn't wait to arrange the marriage with the Ding'an Marquis family and sent me there. Su. Once you go to the Marquis family, you will definitely have a good life. On the day the Ding'an Marquis family sent the betrothal gifts, my father was so excited that he jumped up and down in the courtyard. Although the betrothal gifts were extremely poor, not even as good as those of an ordinary official's family, I looked at his joyful expression, but my heart was filled with worry. A merchant girl marrying into a ruined Marquis family was not a good match by any standard. But my mother had died early, and my father had raised me alone. I couldn't go against him. On the day of my wedding, the carriage carrying my dowry was filled with shiny silver coins. A full 1,000,000 taels. Xia Yin treated me well for a while because of that 1,000,000 taels of silver. In the first year after I married him, I gave birth to Lan Shi, and we were happily married for 2 or 3 years. Until the day the earth shook. That was when I finally saw his true colors. It turned out that he had been secretly in love with his widowed sister-in-law, Ji Yin-yu. Ji Yin-yu came from a family of officials, with graceful manners and the elegance of an orchid. It was said that she had grown up with the Xia brothers like childhood sweethearts. But in the end, she chose to marry Xia Yunhe. Now, Xia Yunhe has been buried for many years. Xia Yinzhao developing feelings for Ji Yin-yu wasn't something hard to understand. Lan Shi had never been close to me since he was a child. He liked Ji Yin-yu and often ran to his aunt's courtyard. One day, when I went to Ji Yin-yu's courtyard to bring him back for dinner, I overheard their conversation at the courtyard gate. Auntie, can Xia live with you? My mother doesn't understand anything, and Xia wants to ask you some questions about his studies. So he has to come to your courtyard. Ji Yin-yu smiled gently and said in a soft voice, Silly Shi. You must live with your mother. Of course. After all, your aunt is just your aunt, not your real mother. Xia Lan Shi hummed softly. I don't want her as my real mother. A merchant's daughter can't compare to your aunt, who is gentle, beautiful, and well-educated. At this point, he became excited. Auntie, why don't you marry my father, so you can be my mother? Hearing these words, I stood there, feeling cold all over. From that day on, whenever I saw Xia Lanshi, I remembered what he had said that day. I could no longer love him as I had before. The Ding'an Marquis mansion gradually regained its prestige thanks to my dowry. Xiaoyan Zhao and Xiaolan she now live in luxury and comfort. All thanks to my money. Xiaolan she has always been frail. And every winter he suffers from a cough. I sought out the best doctors in the capital. Gave him the finest medicines. Kept a close eye on his health. And even prepared special medicinal dishes for him. Coaxing him to eat them. Jian Yu, who boasts of her literary talent, comes to me every month to ask for money to buy expensive writing brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones. This entire household is supported by me. Yet my own child tells others that she wants her to be her real mother. I turned my face away from Xiaolanqi. I no longer prepared medicinal meals for him. No longer reminded him to add clothes when the weather turned cold. And no longer made any effort to grow closer to him. He noticed something was amiss. He walked up to me and pulled at my sleeve. "Mother, are you angry with Lanqi?" The little one spoke in a soft, plaintive voice, his words tinged with a hint of grievance. My heart ached, and tears welled up in my eyes. After all, he was my own flesh and blood, even though I knew that his heart belonged to someone else. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. On the day of the earthquake, I witnessed with my own eyes the love he had for me and his mother. It turned out that he didn't care about me at all. It turned out that he was just like his father and thought of Jian Yu as the most important person in his life. Therefore, I had no hesitation in divorcing Xiaoyan Zhao. I told Xiaoyan Zhao, "This parting, I only hope we never meet again. Take care, Lord Xia." Xiaoyan Zhao paused. "Aren't you going to wait for Lanqi to return and see him one last time?" I turned away coldly, shook my head, and walked toward the carriage I had already hired outside. "There's no need. Tell him that his own mother is dead." I left the capital city by carriage that night and traveled for 3 days before finally arriving in Yinqing. This was the hometown of my maternal grandfather's family. The Su family, my maternal grandfather's clan, was a prominent merchant family in Yinqing. Unfortunately, my mother passed away at a young age, and my father went to the capital city to do business. Since then, we had grown distant from my maternal grandfather's family. I vaguely remember that on my 5th birthday, my maternal grandmother had once brought my cousin and cousin to visit. She held me in her arms, smiling kindly, and slipped 2 golden bracelets onto my wrists. Therefore, when I decided to divorce, I did not think of seeking out my father. Instead, I immediately thought of my maternal family. Upon arriving at the Huang mansion, a servant bowed to me. "May I ask which lady or madam you are?" I swallowed nervously. I told the old Madam Huang that I was her granddaughter, Shin Su, come to pay my respects. After saying that, I took the solid gold bracelets my grandmother had left me as a token and asked Sierra, who was standing beside me, to give them to the servant boy to present to my grandmother. The servant boy's eyes widened, and he ran inside to ask for instructions. In no time, he came running out, stumbling and saying, "Miss, the old lady says to ask you to come in immediately." "Miss Shin, the old lady says to please come in immediately. Hurry up." My grandmother still looked exactly the same as she did back then, though half her hair was white. Her eyes were bright, and she seemed as healthy as ever. She walked toward me, took my hand, and examined me closely. Her eyes welled up with tears. Su, you truly resemble your mother greatly. Your eyebrows and eyes are as if carved from the same mold." She turned to the maidservants and said in a strong voice, "Quickly arrange accommodations for the young lady. The best room must be prepared." She held my hand tightly and sat down beside me. "In a moment, your eldest uncle will return from the estate after settling the day's business. Have him come to see you. Your 2nd and 3rd uncles are not in Yinqing, they did not have the fortune to meet you. As for your cousin, she married into a neighboring county. I will send someone immediately to fetch her back." She urgently asked me about the events of recent years. Su, have you married yet? How does your husband treat you? After discussing the matter of the Dingen Marquis mansion with her, she was so angry that she slammed her fist on the table. This Dingen Marquis is truly despicable. With such a major earthquake, he dared to abandon his wife at home and even tried to appropriate your dowry? If your maternal grandmother were in the capital, she would definitely support you. Her voice was loud and angry as she said, "What kind of father is he? Not thinking about you at all. Only thinking about climbing the social ladder." I held my maternal grandmother's hand tightly. Before the divorce, Su had already found a courier agency to transport her dowry away overnight. At present, the dowry was already at the branch office in Yincheng. Half of the 1,000,000 taels of silver had already been spent, leaving only 500,000 taels. Su had come to Yunqing and couldn't stay at her maternal grandmother's house for free. So she asked her maternal grandmother to accept the money. Her maternal grandmother frowned and looked slightly angry. Su, what are you saying? You are my own granddaughter. Why would I want your dowry? She stroked my hand and sighed. Stay here with your grandmother. I will find a special room to store this money for you, keeping a detailed record of everything. If one day you find a suitable husband, your grandmother will add to your dowry and you may take it all with you. Is that acceptable? I couldn't help but tear up. Yes. I'll listen to you. My grandmother smiled and wiped the tears from my face. You silly child. It's almost time for dinner. Come. Let's go eat together. The days I spent at the Su residence were the happiest days of my life. My eldest maternal uncle and aunt loved me. My cousin treated me kindly. And my cousin Mingru was also very easy to get along with. I no longer had to rack my brains trying to remember the complicated relationships between the people in my uncle's residence, or spend every penny I had on managing the household finances, or take care of Xia Yinzhao and his son. At the Su mansion, I could sleep until the sun was high in the sky. When I woke up, my grandmother would smile and bring me a table full of delicious breakfast. In the afternoon, Mingru would take me to visit her close friends. We would go to the market together or go hiking in the mountains. Or we would sit together, embroider handkerchiefs, arrange flowers, and discuss the latest news in the city. My eldest aunt said she would make me the fashionable clothes that the girls in Yunqing were wearing and came personally to measure my body. Su, just stay here and make this place your home, she whispered in my ear. A warm feeling flowed through my heart, and I said sincerely, "Thank you, Auntie." I thought to myself that I couldn't always eat for free at the Su family's house. Besides, I had always been a restless person. After all, I had worked so hard for so many years that I felt uncomfortable when I had too much free time. I talked to my maternal grandmother about it. My grandmother laughed heartily. Since that's the case, next time your eldest uncle goes to the Su family's money house to count the silver, you should go with him and learn. I followed her advice. After going a few times, I learned the ropes. My eldest uncle then entrusted me with the task of checking the accounts at the money house. On my first day alone at the money house, I got up extra early. In the afternoon, after finishing the accounts, I returned to the Su mansion for lunch. On the way, I was humming a tune happily. That's when the unexpected happened. From a distance, I saw a luxurious carriage following me at a leisurely pace. My heart skipped a beat. Could I have been targeted by bad people? I turned a few corners and entered a small alley. I walked quickly, thinking that I could escape the carriage. But at the end of the alley stood a familiar figure. Su. His face was full of joy. I finally found you. But I couldn't smile. I knew that man all too well. He was my husband, Xia Yinzhao, with whom I had shared a bed for 7 years. Since I couldn't escape, I decided to just stand there and look up at him. Mr. Xia, Long time no see. I was surprised to see hurt in his eyes. Su. You. It's only been a few months. And you've grown so distant from me? I looked at him in surprise and said coldly, Master Siam must have forgotten that we've already divorced. He took a few quick steps toward me. His expression agitated. Su. Do you know how long I've been searching for you? It was your father who told me you might have returned to your maternal grandfather's home. So I came here to look for you. He reached out and tremblingly grabbed my sleeve. I've been searching for you here for half a month and finally found you. Su. Come back with me. She misses you very much and has been thinking of you every day at the mansion. I gave him a strange look and turned away to shake off his hand. Uncle. You're being very strange. If you continue to be rude to me, I'll call for help. With that, I avoided him and ran out of the alley. Su. Xia Yinzhao chased after me. I ran as fast as I could, determined to shake him off. In the distance, I saw the gate of the Su mansion. My heart leaped with joy, and I hurried toward the steps. But I stumbled and collided with a broad chest. Young lady, be careful. It was a handsome young man dressed in white. I felt rather embarrassed and said, Young master, I'm sorry. I was running too fast. When I looked up, I felt an odd sense of familiarity in his features. He seemed to have a few strands of my elegant grey uncle's appearance, and a few strands of my capable and shrewd grey tan's appearance. I suddenly realized that this was the Su mansion. I stammered, Are you my cousin Ming Chang? I didn't see my cousin Su Ming Chang when I returned to the mansion this time. My eldest uncle said he went to the provincial capital to take the provincial examination. The young master looked surprised. Cousin Su? I quickly composed myself and greeted him. Cousin Shin Su greets you. He hurriedly reached out to support me and smiled. Cousin, you're too kind. Who are you? Let go of her. Suddenly, a furious shout came from the distance. Xia Yinzhao charged over with a look of determination, forcefully grabbed my hand, and shoved my cousin Ming Chang hard. Don't touch my wife. I was so angry that I bit my lip and, taking advantage of Xia Yinzhao's distraction, shoved him hard. He stumbled and almost fell to the ground. Xia Yinzhao, you can get away with this in the capital, but you dare to come to Yincheng to cause trouble? I angrily stretched out my hand, trembling as I pointed at him. Get out of here. Don't let me see you again. My cousin reached out and helped me up. Cousin. Who is he? I said hatefully. He's just a good-for-nothing, womanizing scoundrel. Xia Yinzhao frowned at me. Shin Su, how dare you speak so disrespectfully? I am the Duke of Ding'an. My cousin laughed beside me. Duke of Ding'an? I've never heard of him. All I know is that most of the businesses in Yuncheng belong to the Su family. This is their territory. Who gave you the nerve to be so rude to my cousin? Su Mingchang's sister? Saying this, he slowly rolled up his sleeves. I stared in disbelief at my refined cousin, then grabbed Xia Yinzhao by the collar. I lifted him off the ground. Cousin, did father tell you that I was going to take the provincial exams? He chuckled. Actually, I'm taking the military exams. Xia Yinzhao was slowly lifted off the ground by him. His face gradually turned pale with fear. What are you going to do to this nobleman? Su Mingchang smiled faintly. He delivered a powerful punch to Xia Yinzhao's abdomen. Xia Yinzhao's face contorted in pain. I heard that when the capital was hit by an earthquake, you left my cousin alone in the house and ran off to save your widowed sister-in-law? Another punch struck Xia Yinzhao's chest. His cousin's fist was as hard as iron. He couldn't help but scream in pain. Su Mingchang turned to me. Cousin, what are you standing there for? Come and hit him. I snapped out of it. I punched Xia Yinzhao in the waist. I used all my strength. It was as if I was venting all the pent-up anger I had been holding inside for years. Oh. Su. Please stop him from hitting me. Xiaoyan Zhao was still the same coward as before. He didn't last long before begging for mercy. Seeing his pained expression, I feared something might happen to him, and my cousin wouldn't be able to clear his name. I pulled on my cousin's sleeve. Enough. Ming Chang cousin. Don't cause trouble. Let him go. My cousin smiled and nodded at me. He threw him to the ground. Cousin. Mother sent me out to buy some vegetables. She said she wants to show off her cooking skills and cook for you herself. Do you want to come with me? I hurriedly replied. Of course I do. My cousin and I walked around Xiaoyan Zhao, who was lying on the ground moaning in pain, and headed toward the vegetable market. I wasn't worried about Xiaoyan Zhao's life. He had run away quickly just now, and I was afraid he had left the guards of the Bo family behind. In a while, someone would naturally take him to the medical clinic. After chatting with my cousin for a while, I learned that he had just returned to the mansion that morning. He suddenly lowered his voice. Cousin, there's something you have to keep secret for me. I went to take the provincial exam, but I lied to my father and said it was a literary exam. In fact, it was a martial arts exam. I opened my eyes wide. If you pass the exam, the messenger will come to our house to deliver the good news. And then you won't be able to keep it a secret. My cousin sucked in a breath of cold air. Let's keep it a secret for as long as we can. If my father punishes me with the family law, I won't be able to get up for 7 or 8 days. I hurriedly agreed with a smile. All right. Since my cousin is willing to discipline Xiaoyan Zhao for me, I'll do my best to keep it a secret for you. He smiled as if he had been bathed in spring breeze. I couldn't help but shake my head in admiration. But I never expected that this tall, handsome cousin of mine would actually be into dancing and swordplay. Indeed, one can't judge a book by its cover. As soon as we arrived at the vegetable market, my cousin skillfully weaved his way through the stalls, quickly finished his shopping, and carried the bags back home. By the time they reached the gate of the Su mansion, Xiaoyan Zhao was already gone. With my cousin back, dinner was lively. My aunt brought the dishes she had prepared to the table while asking my cousin how his exam went. My cousin felt guilty and hesitated. It was okay. His maternal uncle spoke earnestly from the side. The emperor issued an edict at the beginning of the year, stating that the 4 classes of scholars, farmers, artisans, and merchants, regardless of social status, are all eligible to take the imperial examinations. You must seize this opportunity. If you become an official, one day you may bring honor to the Su family. He furrowed his brows. When you come back, settle down and don't spend all your time thinking about going to the martial arts training ground to find your group of friends. Su Mingchang laughed. Father, hurry up and eat. Mother's cooking is delicious. Be careful. It'll get cold. I wanted to help my cousin, so I interjected. Actually, it's not a bad idea to practice martial arts more. If you pass the military examination, you can become a military officer and protect the Su family, right? My cousin looked at me gratefully. My uncle gave me a disapproving glance. That's easier said than done. Military officers have to fight on the battlefield. Swords and spears have no eyes. If something happens, what will we do? It won't happen. Father. My cousin grew anxious, as if he wanted to argue with my uncle. I hurriedly signaled him with my eyes. Persuading my eldest uncle to change his mind was not something that could be done overnight. If he said anything else, he would reveal our secret and be punished according to family law. After my cousin returned, I had one more thing to do besides going to the money exchange. I had to cover for my cousin. My aunt was afraid that my cousin would go back to practicing with swords and knives, so she specifically asked me to follow him. She quietly pulled me aside. Su, You will take him to school every day and wait there until school is out. Then go to the school to call him back for dinner. Is that okay? I nodded vigorously. My cousin was overjoyed and took me straight to the martial arts training ground early in the morning. I couldn't stand the heat, so I told him I would come back for him at dinner time. I also wanted to take him to the private school to avoid being discovered by my eldest uncle and aunt. Back at the mansion, I was embroidering a handkerchief with my cousin Ming Ro, thinking about how to persuade my eldest uncle. Suddenly, I heard the voice of a servant outside the door. Miss, something's wrong. A strange man is holding a child and has come to our mansion, saying that he is your husband. My heart sank. I didn't expect that Xia Yunchao would still be around after being beaten up by my cousin Ming Cheng. Wait, a child? I suddenly felt cold all over. Could it be that he disappeared for half a month to bring Xia Lanqi back? I jumped up from the soft couch. I hurried to the front hall. My cousin Ming Ro called after me. Cousin, is your ex-husband here? I want to go with you to see what kind of person he is. As soon as I entered the front hall, a small figure rushed toward me. Mother! It was Xia Lanqi. He clung tightly to me, crying and wiping his tears and snot on my skirt. Mother! Cici finally saw you. Cici missed you so much. Ming Rong frowned behind me. Cousin, is this really your child? No. I recalled his figure rushing toward Jianyu's courtyard during the earthquake, disregarding everything else. A wave of disgust surged in my heart. This child doesn't recognize me, he wants his aunt to be his real mother. During the earthquake, he was only thinking about saving his aunt. Xia Lanqi cried softly. Mother, are you saying that you don't want Cici anymore? I pushed him away coldly. Didn't I tell you to tell your father that your real mother is dead? His maternal grandmother heard everything from behind. She had been holding a few candies in her hand, wanting to give them to Xia Lanqi. Seeing this, she turned and stuffed all the candies into the hands of a maid standing nearby. Her voice was as loud as ever. Who is this wild child? Can anyone just walk into the Su mansion like this? Perhaps it was this remark that made Xia Yunzhao, who had been hesitating outside, unable to stay any longer. He walked into the front hall and bowed to his maternal grandmother, saying, Madam Su, I have come here specifically to bring Lanqi back to take Su home. He actually had the nerve to smile. These past few days, my wife has been a bother. Please forgive her. His words nearly made his maternal grandmother's nose twist with anger. What's more, after saying all that with such a noble air, he actually walked toward me. Su, go back. He lowered his voice. I've already found another place for my older sister-in-law to live. From now on, only our family will live in the Ding'an Marquis mansion. Also, if you come back with me, I won't pursue the matter of you taking the dowry and running away. I suddenly reached out and slapped him hard across his face, which was only inches away from mine. Xia Yunzhao, how can you have skin thicker than a city wall? That was my dowry. How did it become yours? You, Shinsu, how dare you hit me? Xia Yunzhao's eyes widened in anger. My grandmother hurried over and pulled me into her arms. Gui Su, don't cry. Good girl. Su, don't cry. She glared at Xia Yunzhao with a cold expression I had never seen before. Someone, get him out of here. Several burly maids wielding sticks beat him all the way out the door. My grandmother turned her cold gaze to Xia Lanqi, who was trembling in fear and had forgotten to cry. Do you want to be beaten out too? Xia Lanqi sobbed and ran out. My grandmother spat venomously at their retreating backs. When the earth shook, why didn't a beam fall and crush them to death? I was stunned. The beam didn't crush them, but it almost fell on me. If I hadn't thought quickly and hidden under the offering table, I would have been dead. Xia Yun would have gotten his way and married Jianyu into the family. My dowry would have gone to the Marquis family for them to squander. The CF family was too despicable. This CF family is truly despicable. Perhaps the Dingin Marquis mansion has already been hollowed out from within. And they're coveting my cousin's dowry? Ming Rou suddenly spoke up. And I suddenly understood. No wonder Xia Yinzhao went to such lengths to find me. Besides the title of Marquis, he holds no official position. The annual salary he receives from his uncle is not enough to cover the expenses of such a large family. It is only because I have been filling the deficit with my dowry and living frugally that we have been able to barely get by. The reason why half of the 1,000,000 taels of silver I brought with me was used up in just a few years was to fill the huge hole in the family's finances. But he doesn't even remember my kindness. His heart and mind are filled with thoughts of his widowed sister-in-law. Even my own son, Lan Shi, is the same. I fear that after I am gone, the will not even be able to sustain itself. Today, they came together. How much of their words are sincere, and how much is insincere? It is now clear to me. My maternal grandmother suddenly turned to look at me. Her eyes were sharp and piercing. Su, do you want to see this father and son again? My heart skipped a beat. Grandmother, I can't even wait to cut ties with them. How could I want to see them again? My grandmother walked up to me, speaking firmly and decisively. They have truly gone too far. They had already agreed to divorce you. But now they are clamoring to withhold your dowry. Now, father and son are coming together to harass you. She sighed. You were the wife of the Marquis for 7 years. Do you have any leverage over him? My heart suddenly skipped a beat. There are so many noble families in the capital. Which one doesn't have some dirty secrets? But the matter of the Dingin Marquis family is indeed quite serious. The Dingin Marquis family was granted their title at the founding of the dynasty for their contributions to the founding of the empire. However, because their contributions were not that great, they were only granted the lowest rank of Marquis. According to custom, they were granted some public and private fields. Private fields could be owned by the families of princes and marquises forever. Public fields, however, could only be owned for 40 years, after which they had to be returned to the imperial family. But when the Dingin Marquisite's 40 years were up, they bribed the officials who measured the fields and had the public fields designated as private fields, returning only half of them to the imperial family. I discovered this when I was looking through the Marquisite's accounts. Appropriating public fields is a crime of treason. If the punishment is severe, it could cost one their life. I told my maternal grandmother about this matter. My maternal grandmother gave me a sly smile. Your maternal grandmother's family has relatives serving in the imperial court. Coincidentally, though his rank is not high, he is a 5th rank censor. I couldn't help but cry out in surprise. A censor has the right to speak freely? My maternal grandmother nodded with a smile. Although she was old, she was still able to command them. She stroked my hand. Good girl. Just wait and see. Soon, that man surnamed Xia will have his hands full. Xia Yinzhao knew that I was protected by the Su family. And if he tried to take me away by force, he would not be able to. So he began to haunt every corner of Yunqing. However, I asked my cousin to escort me. Perhaps it was because he broke out in a cold sweat when he saw my cousin. Therefore, he always kept his distance from me. One day, my cousin returned from the martial arts training ground and, on a whim, said he wanted to take me to eat the best Wenxi tofu in Yunqing. We arrived at a restaurant called Fenyu Lu. My cousin encountered some fellow disciples who were also participating in the martial arts examination. So he went over to exchange greetings. Su, go ahead and wait in the private room. I'll be right there. I replied, all right. However, after taking a few steps, someone suddenly grabbed me tightly and pressed a handkerchief over my mouth. In an instant, I fainted. When I came to, I found myself in one of the private rooms at Fenjayula. But the person in front of me was the last person I wanted to see. Xia Yunzhao was reaching out his hand, gently stroking my face. Su Su. I finally see you again. His eyes were filled with what he thought was sincere affection. Su Su. Will you come back with me? A day as husband and wife is worth 100 days of kindness. Even if you don't think of me, you should think of Lan Shi. He lost his mother and cries every day in the mansion. I glared at him hatefully. You're dreaming. Xia Yunzhao. I married you because it was my father's wish. I couldn't disobey him. But since you agreed to divorce me, you shouldn't keep pestering me. You should know that forced love is never sweet. He suddenly laughed scornfully. Shinsu, you have feelings for your cousin, don't you? You spend every day with him, never leaving his side. That's why you don't want to go back with me, right? I wanted to slap him, but found that my whole body was weak and powerless. In my panic, I spat on him fiercely. In panic, I spat at him fiercely. Get out! You lowly scoundrel! He suddenly grabbed my arm, leaned down, and kissed my forehead. Su Su, come back with me. When the earthquake struck, I was confused. After I rescued my sister-in-law, I came to look for you, but I couldn't find you, and you didn't answer me. Su Su, please forgive me. I didn't have the strength to do anything but curse him crazily. But he became even more excited. Shinsu, if your cousin saw you like this, would he still want you? I watched him approach me in despair. Suddenly, the door to the private room was kicked open. He was lifted off me by my cousin who had burst in. My cousin stared at him as if he were a dead man. He held him up, intending to throw him out the window. No. Cousin. Don't kill him. I panicked. My cousin finally calmed down a bit. He threw him to the ground and stepped on his chest with his foot. Xia. You choose. How many ribs do you want broken today? He said this while flexing the knuckles of his palm. I was afraid my cousin would cause a major incident. I also remembered what my grandmother had told me. Xia Yunzhao would soon be too preoccupied with his own affairs to bother with us. I pulled on my cousin's sleeve. Cousin. Just give him a warning. Don't ruin our appetite. My cousin was still extremely dissatisfied. But he listened to me and simply beat him up a little. But it was enough to make Xia Yunzhao cry in pain for a long time. My cousin helped me up from the ground and took me to eat wensi tofu. But as he was eating, he suddenly fell silent and looked at me. Cousin. Why aren't you eating? He looked anxious. What did he do to you? I shook my head. He didn't do anything. But I have no strength in my whole body and can't even lift my hands. It's soft bone powder. My cousin was so angry that he wanted to go back and beat Xia Yunzhao. I hurriedly said, No. Cousin. It should be fine in a little while. The effect of the medicine didn't wear off for a long time. My cousin carried me back to the Su residence. When my aunt saw us, she rushed over and scolded my cousin. How could you treat your cousin like that? How will she ever get married? Only then did my cousin realize what he had done. He put me down, filled with remorse. Cousin. I'm sorry. I was in a hurry to get you back and didn't think about it. I pulled my aunt's hand. Aunt. It's okay. After that day, I felt that the atmosphere in the mansion had become a little strange. My aunt, in particular, looked at me strangely. She was also more considerate to me than before. I loved the honey lotus root she made, but she used to think the process was too complicated and didn't make it very often. This time, however, she had her maid bring it to me every day. My cousin also looked strange, but that was because the day of the military exam results was getting closer. He nervously held my hand. Cousin. Do you think I can pass the exam? I knew that my cousin, who looked like a scholar, was actually very fierce on the martial arts training ground. I also knew that his ambition was to pass the military exam, become a military officer, and go to battle. I firmly held his hand. I gripped his hand firmly. "Cousin, you will definitely pass." Little did I know that the scene had been witnessed by my aunt. That evening, she summoned me. She began asking me all sorts of questions, probing me for information. She asked about my birth date, my zodiac sign, and even the exact time of my birth. I looked at her in confusion but answered her questions nonetheless. Before I left, she took out a jade bracelet from the drawer, which was entirely green, and slipped it onto my wrist. She muttered, "In 2 days, I'll take you to buy some more clothes." I hurriedly waved my hands and said, "Auntie, it's really not necessary. The ones you made last time, I haven't even worn them all yet." I finally managed to leave my aunt's room. I played with the jade bracelet on my wrist in confusion. The jade looked very fine. But why did my aunt suddenly give me this bracelet? As I was deep in thought, I suddenly heard Sierra's voice. Miss, the old lady is calling you to the main house. She said it's very good news." The so-called very good news was that Xie Yunzhao had fallen from grace. The matter of the Ding'an Marquis' embezzlement of public land had been exposed by the censor in the imperial court. The emperor was furious and issued an edict to arrest Xie Yunzhao. The county magistrate of Yunqing had already communicated with the Su family and reported that Xie Yunzhao was in Yunqing. At present, he has already been brought to the capital. The emperor has issued an edict to strip Xie Yunzhao of his title as the Marquis of Ding'an and sentence him to exile 3,000 li away. All female relatives have been confiscated and sent to the imperial harem as concubines, including the former Marquis of Ding'an's wife, Ji Yu. The eldest son, Xia Lanxi, due to his young age, has been temporarily spared punishment and will be exiled to the frontier when he turns 14. My maternal grandmother said that my father couldn't bear to see him suffer at such a young age, so he had already come forward to adopt him. However, when he grew up, he would still have to be exiled to the cold and harsh border region like his father. Su, from now on, you will never see that man with the surname Xia again. My heart felt lighter. It was as if a huge rock had been lifted off my chest. I knelt in front of my maternal grandmother, excitedly saying, "Thank you, maternal grandmother, for your kindness." My maternal grandmother smiled and helped me up. I saw my aunt smiling as she walked over from the side and said, "Since there is already good news, I would like to ask the old lady for one more favor, so that we can celebrate 2 happy events at once." I had a strange feeling of foreboding. Su is a good-natured child and well-suited for Ming Chang. Why not ask the old lady to arrange their marriage? It would be a union of 2 families. "Mother! Auntie!" my cousin and I exclaimed in unison. I finally understood why Auntie had been acting so strangely lately. She must have misunderstood the relationship between my cousin and me. My cousin and I exchanged glances. Under our aunt's puzzled gaze, we both knelt before our grandmother. "Grandmother, our aunt must have misunderstood something. Please don't take it to heart." My cousin nodded vigorously. "Chang treats Su like his own sister, just like he does Ming Ro. He would never have any improper thoughts toward his cousin." My aunt was shocked. "Then you too." Just as we were trying to explain ourselves to my aunt, there was a sudden sound of gongs and drums outside. "Lady Su Gongzi has passed the imperial examination." Upon hearing this, my grandmother immediately stood up from her chair and hurried to the door. When my aunt heard that there was nothing between my cousin and me, she couldn't accept it. Now, she heard the great news that my cousin had passed the imperial examination. Overcome with joy and grief, she could hardly stand. My cousin and I exchanged glances, got up from the ground, and supported my aunt, who was feeling a little dizzy, on either side as we walked toward the door. "Congratulations, Mr. Su," The person who brought the news smiled so broadly that his eyes were narrowed to slits. Passing the military examination as the top candidate. He is sure to have a bright future. My aunt suddenly gasped. What? The top candidate in the military examination? She rolled her eyes and fainted completely. My cousin was quite fortunate. My eldest uncle had gone north a few days earlier to meet my second uncle for business. Otherwise, he would have certainly faced family discipline. However, he still had to face my grandmother. My maternal grandmother was so angry that she asked the maid beside her to fetch a cane and whipped my cousins back fiercely. You ungrateful child. You lied to the whole family. My cousin kept his head down and did not dare say a word. My maternal grandmother hit him a few times, then stood with her hands on her hips, panting. I took the opportunity to approach her and whispered, "Grandmother, my aunt is still unconscious. Let's go check on her first. We can punish my cousin later when she wakes up." My grandmother listened to me. Upon hearing this, she put down the cane. I helped my grandmother up and frantically signaled to my cousin to hide. A few days later, my aunt woke up. My eldest uncle heard the bad news that my cousin had passed the military exam and rushed back overnight. But this time, he was much calmer than before. I think it was because the letter I sent him had worked. I told him the truth about my cousin taking the military exam and wrote many words to persuade him. I told him that my cousin was determined to become a military officer and that he was indeed an excellent martial artist. Furthermore, not all military officers would go to the battlefield. If my cousin became the Minister of War one day, wouldn't that bring honor to our family? In short, after much persuasion from me, my uncle reluctantly accepted the fact. He asked us all to leave so that he could persuade my aunt. Finally, my aunt was able to talk to my cousin calmly. I took the opportunity to take off the green bracelet and give it back to her. Smiling sheepishly, "Auntie, I'm sorry for giving you the wrong impression earlier." She had fainted, which brought back some old ailments, and she was still recovering. So she spoke with some weakness. "Your aunt misunderstood you. I'm sorry." She rolled her eyes at my cousin, who was standing in the distance. "He's not lucky enough to find a good wife like you." She withdrew her gaze and looked at me with a smile. "But I've always treated you like my own daughter. So I'll definitely find you a good marriage in the future." I smiled and shook my head. "Aunt, I don't want to get married." In her surprised gaze, I whispered, "I want to learn how to do business with my uncle." My aunt frowned. "Why? Why not find a considerate husband, stay at home to raise children, and live a comfortable life? Why follow your uncle's example, enduring wind and rain every day?" I shook my head. "Auntie, I've been married before, so I know that I don't like that kind of life. These days, I've been helping my eldest uncle and my maternal grandmother manage the money house and learning about business. I've realized that I like doing these things." I took my aunt's hand and smiled sincerely at her. "Auntie, thank you for taking care of me." My aunt pretended to be angry. Sue, are you treating your aunt like a stranger?" I giggled. "I would not dare. In the future, if I am not in the mansion, I will ask my aunt to take care of the silver I brought with me." My aunt and I smiled at each other. "All right. Then I support your decision." That autumn, I boarded a ship bound for the south with my eldest uncle. My cousin did not go directly to the army, but decided to return to the mansion to concentrate on martial arts training, hoping to become a martial arts champion in the future. On the day I left, my maternal grandmother, aunt, cousin, and cousin stood on the shore and waved to us. "Come back safely." My eldest uncle looked at me with some concern. Sue, the boat is rocking. Can you handle it?" I nodded without hesitation. If I couldn't even handle this little difficulty, how could I handle anything else in the future? I leaned against the side of the boat and looked at the rolling waves in front of me. I couldn't help but smile contentedly. The past was now gone with the flowing water. The Shinsu of today was a brand new Shinsu. Extra Story 1. On his way into exile, Xiaoyan often thought of Shinsu. He thought of the days when they were still happily married. Shinsu had a gentle disposition, was considerate of others, and had given him a lovely son. The silver she brought with her was enough to provide a very good life for the family. But after they had settled into a comfortable life, he couldn't help but entertain other thoughts. For instance, Ji and Yu. Ji and Yu had grown up with him and his older brother. As the eldest son, the title naturally passed to his older brother. He could only watch enviously as his older brother inherited the title in Ji and Yu. But his older brother was not so lucky. He died of illness after only a few years. His mind began to stir again. However, he already had Shinsu. He understood that maintaining the proper distance between himself and Ji and Yu was the right thing to do as a gentleman. But one day, when he passed by Ji and Yu's courtyard, she was waiting for him at the door. Yun Zhao. Do you still want me? She had always known that he loved her. Therefore, she simply reached out her hand to him. He willingly approached her. They made love in the courtyard that had once belonged to Ji and Yu and his older brother. He became more and more addicted to her scent and the secret excitement. He thought that he could hide his affair with her from Shinsu. But on that day when the earth shook, he subconsciously went to save Ji and Yu. His feelings for Ji and Yu were still exposed. Shinsu left. She took her dowry and abandoned him and Lanshi. In the days after she left, he and Ji and Yu were together like a normal married couple. Once, he forgot to hide it from Lanshi. He saw her wide-eyed, staring at them in shock. So you two betrayed my mother all along? Regret flashed through his heart. That regret became even stronger after the Bo family's silver was completely emptied. He began to think of Shinsu, of her every smile and every frown. One day, he dreamed that Shinsu was smiling and walking toward him. Taking his hand, he quickly embraced her tightly. Su, I will never leave you again. He suddenly opened his eyes. After waking up, all he heard were the snores of the exiled criminals around him, and a bone-chilling coldness permeated the air. He suddenly laughed bitterly. As he laughed, tears fell from his eyes. She would never return. They would never return either. The rest of his life would be spent atoning for the mistakes he had made. Story Extra 2. Xia Lanshi once begged his maternal grandfather, Shen He, to take him to find his mother. After his mother left, Ji Anyue tore off his kind exterior. He began to use the excuse of the mansion's financial difficulties to withhold his monthly allowance. The medicine he had been taking to nourish his body was no longer allowed. The food in the mansion also deteriorated significantly. Ji and Yu also began to find excuses to beat and scold him. He finally realized how great a mistake he had made. But Shin He only silently stroked his head. Your mother seems to have gone south with her uncle to do business. Your grandfather doesn't know where she went either. He lowered his head, looking dejected. I wrote her many letters, but she didn't reply to a single one. Xia Lanshi understood the pain in his grandfather's heart. He had married his mother to his father in exchange for his own future. Therefore, after his mother divorced his father, she refused to have any further contact with him and went to Yunqing. After his father was exiled, it was his grandfather who, unable to bear it, took him in. His grandfather said he would find a way to spare him from the punishment of exile. However, with his criminal record, no school would take him in. At his age, he should have been studying in school, but instead he had nothing to do, wandering aimlessly on the streets day after day. One day, he saw someone on the street whose back resembled his mother's. He glanced at me strangely, but he ran toward her joyfully. The woman turned around and looked at him with a puzzled expression. You child, go find your mother. She turned away and muttered, How could someone mistake their own mother? She shook her head and walked away. Confused. Xiaolanqi was left standing there, his eyes brimming with tears. He suddenly remembered that he no longer had a mother. So he squatted on the ground and cried loudly. If only time could be turned back to the day of the earthquake. He would run to his mother first. With tears streaming down his face, he would tell her how much he regretted it. He would tell her how much he missed her and how much he loved her. Unfortunately, he realized it too late.